Hello and welcome to Any Relation to the Crisps. This is a podcast that is about the year that I took out of university to run a digital media agency at the ages of 20 and 21. And all the crazy things that I got up to in that year, the things that I learned, the experiences I got to have. And this is the first proper episode. So the last episode was just an introduction into how I got into business, why I got into business, and also the Year in Enterprise, the program that is the year out running a business, how I got onto that. This episode is about the Leeds to New York leadership program. So this sort of took place between the March of 2017, and then the program itself was on in June 2017, and the program was an opportunity for, I think it was about 18 students to go to New York for a week, find out how the city is run by talking to different business leaders all the way up and down the spectrum of organisational structures. So we've got charities, we've got non-for-profits, we've got corporates, and we were speaking to business owners, large and small. Alongside that, we were working in groups to develop our own means of a smart city solution. So this was the focus of the program. We were looking at the ways in which New York used its resources. Obviously, not a lot of space, very populated, lots of issues that need addressing. So, pardon me. So New York, in the context of a smart city, this was the phrase that we heard a lot over the week, was efficiently using its resources to address all these problems, and we were using those influences to come up with our own solution, which we would then pitch. So let's start at the very beginning. I found out about this via email that got sent around to all the students at uni. And the application was a video, a 2-minute video, and I was drawn in because I've had success with video applications before. Before I came to uni, I was actually in a program that was trying to get kids into college in America, and that was a video application, and I got through to that, and I even got through to the final round, which was the final filtration of kids, and we all got to go to like a college tour. So this had happened in, I think, 2014, summer of, and was super good. No, it was a really good time. Went to Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Amherst, and there's one I'm missing. What is it? Columbia in New York. And my path took me to the University of Leeds. I didn't end up going to uni in America, but it gave me an inflated sense of ego when it came to things that were applicable via a video. So I applied to this, and it was super cheesy. Like, when I watch it back now, and it's questionable at best. It was a good video for all intents and purposes. It was well produced, looked good. I used uni's nice cameras for it, but I'm just thinking in particular, the music in the video was a recording of me playing New York, New York, and I just cut back and forth to it every now and again, and I had an angle of like my hands on the keys, and it was all very cheesy. But it basically just said my application and who I was, and I positioned myself as I could be the guy who's actually using this knowledge to go towards a business. I'm about to start my Year in Enterprise. I don't think I'd actually had the Year in Enterprise confirmed by then, so maybe a little bit ambitious, but thankfully all came through fine. But after the deadline and a bit of time, I got the email saying I got a place, so really excited about that. There was a Leeds element to the program as well, so before we went and after we returned to and from New York, we would speak to a few Leeds-based businesses compare them, Leeds and New York, as smart cities. Use the knowledge that we'd learned in New York to analyse what was happening in Leeds, develop another pitch, and pitch that in Leeds to some business figures as we did in New York. So this is an experience that I would say helped with a lot of the foundational skills of the year in enterprise. Obviously, it wasn't super related to Seabrook Media, but it was something that was related to business, and that was useful information in itself. So we got over there mid-June 17. We were staying, I think it was like 103rd or something. This hostel, on the Upper West Side, and it was like I remember the days were pretty long. We were it was nice because we had total independence after the days, and it was very strange, having been on a couple of school holidays where you've got teachers and head counts and registrars and all that sort of stuff. It was strange to go on a school trip as a university student with staff, and they were like, you should do what you want, you go where you want. Like, when the day was over, you were free, and I loved that. that was very fun, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But the days themselves, so we would wake up in our hostel. There was 6 of us staying in this one room. We suited up, got the subway down to wherever it was that we were all meeting that day, and then we'd have all these different workshops and sessions and Q&As, and we'd go and visit some businesses, and they'd put us into teams and say, you've got to go to this address, go and ask them everything they know, and come back, tell you what you learned. It was great. It was really, really fun. Notable experiences. Some of the sessions were held in the Latham and Watkins skyscraper, high up on whatever floor, in this very, very, very exec boardroom with those chairs that lean way too far back. We visited this cool little bakery in Harlem that only employed, I think it was like women who had emigrated. That was really good, and then they would skill those up, teach them how to cook, bake bread. But I think there was also an element of they would teach them other things as well, like knitting and sewing, and skills that they could then go and take to other actual employers. So it was like a way of paying people who needed work and then also getting them in proper jobs later. I remember them telling us about so many had gone to work in real bakeries and were like artisan bakers now, things like that. So that was really cool. What else did we do? We got to explore quite sort of far and wide. Going as far as, like I say, Harlem. We were in Soho for some of it. We were in the American Express building, which is very near Ground Zero, I think. I remember they told us that actually when the planes hit, a piece of the World Trade Center actually hit, like took a bit of the facade off the American Express building. So that was strange. But that was where we held our pitch. I remember that day. So we still had a few sessions in the morning, and we had a telephone conference call thing, but it was like a video telephone, and it was on this TV with a camera on the top, and I was like, this is me, cocky media know-it-all. Like, I mean, is a Skype call really the best way to have this? Are they gonna not? I hope the mic's good enough. I hope the camera's good enough. It was like crystal clear. It was like this ultra HD telly. You could see everything. You could see right down the room. It was crazy. It was really, really weird. I'm talking about going to New York and this amazing experience, and then the actual things that I enjoy about it are like the tellies that I saw. But no, it was a very varied experience. We got to speak to. Do you know what? I'll backtrack because there's some important context that I should probably go over. So, the uni had selected kids from every different category you can imagine. There were different like courses in there, people from different hobbies, mature students, first years, final years, medics, humanities students. There were students of different religions, students from different home countries. It was really, really broad. Really, really broad. And with that came different perspectives and different upbringings and different understandings of the world and lenses through which we all appreciated the world. And what was really interesting about this whole experience is just how strange it was, in a good way, how nice a surprise it was that everyone from all of these different backgrounds could coexist. And we did coexist. Everyone got on really, really well. Like, everyone had a few mates that they got on really well with, and the program and the talks and things, it encouraged an environment of debate, but debate where everyone knew that debate was allowed. So there was no one arguing, there was no one barking back, there was no one being adamant with the viewpoints. Everyone was being diplomatic, offering critique, exchanging ideas. And that was really interesting. One of the talks, and I remember, so obviously students generally across the board are all pretty left sitting, pretty liberal. And I remember feeling every now and again, because I was the businessman, and I say that like officially, but that isn't my personality or the attitude that I put out. I'm not this hard and fast, profits first, I'm not the idea of a businessman. I'm quite compassionate. I care quite a lot about causes and people and things like that. And I remember every now and again, because there were a lot of people who were really into the social enterprises that we went and looked at, and the charities that we went and looked at. And I was always interested to speak to the, there was I won't mention the company, but we spoke to a guy who was like, I think it was like vice president of like CEO of their American branch of this massive brand. So really, really big names, and I was always interested in them as a leader, and how do they grow and how do they build a business. And occasionally I worried that I was painting for myself a reputation of, I'm the business guy, I'm going to be standing out because I look like I'm on the right, and I'm not on the right politically. I'm quite liberal as well, but I didn't want people to think that I was, by contrast, this heartless, stone cold businessman. And the nice thing was that no one had that impression, and people were accepting of the fact that I was on the program because I was running Seabrook Media, and no one else on the program was running a business. Everyone was here for different things, but I was the guy running a business. So that was like how I fit into the program. But people were very accepting of that, and I've got a lot of people who I'm in contact with following that week in New York, and some very close friends as a result of that. But the other interesting thing, I remember there was a lady who came to speak to us, and she was a fantastic public speaker, and she won over the crowd as soon as she came in, and by the end, she had applause and she had people asking to, add her on LinkedIn and stuff. People loved her. And the feedback after it was like, I really, really enjoyed that. I think she was my favourite speaker. Da, da, da. But that was really interesting because I thought she would potentially be one of the most polarising people who spoke, because her talk was about her business, and her business constructed a chemical material that were like one of their major clients was the military, because it was a material that aided the accurate detonation of missiles or something like that. Obviously, I'm no military engineer. I don't know the ins and outs, but it was some sort of thing that went inside a missile to make sure it went off at the right time. And she, just trying to sort of recall, I remember she saying, some pretty capitalist stuff, and her stance was, I think it was pretty like realist to war. And I say that because among young people there's often the stance of we shouldn't have war, and she was more of the opinion of we do have a war, and we will have wars, and we need to make sure that we are well armed to protect our people and that sort of thing. And I was sat there thinking, people are going to be arguing with her. People are going to be kicking off about this. And it wasn't the only application. Her family had done. I think her dad was a chemist, and this is where it all came from. The product was very applicable to a lot of situations. It wasn't just a military thing. It was so high up the chemical, like, evolution of man sort of thing. Like, it was so near it was two applications what a stem cell is to organs. It could be used in so many different fields, but wasn't so far away from raw materials, or so close to raw materials that it was just basically a raw material itself. So it was a really well positioned product, and they made an awful lot of it. And her employment structure was also based around I can't remember exactly the demographic, but it was like uneducated. I remember her saying something like a lot of her workforce hadn't graduated high school, and that was trying to create opportunities for that, or there might have been an ex-con element to it. And so it was a really interesting talk, because it was this sustainable, healthy, ethical business that was producing this product that a major buyer was the military, and that was crazy, and people loved it. And then there was the guy that I really liked, who was this VP, and he wasn't, he didn't get into any of that territory, but he was just a businessman hard and fast. And he said that his I remember I asked him in the Q&A bit, I was like, because he talked about building a team, and I said something like, how do you build and inspire a team to a common goal, because he made out that this is the most effective way to get a job done. And he said, to be honest, if they're not working out, you just have to fire them. And I remember a lot of people had a bit of a backlash to that, because it is pretty harsh. I mean, I hear that and I think, well, it is what it is. You can't. There's a Jim Rohn quote. That escapes me, but it's to do with, you can't train an expert, or you can't train a genius. You just have to hire a genius, that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, fair enough. So it was interesting that a lot of people had backlash to this guy, but loved this lady who, has such an interesting position in business. And this wasn't a charity or anything, And that's probably one of the most valuable things that this program gave, was the opportunity to be surprised and to see things in the real world. I'm not just reading in a book about. It's very underwhelming to read, £12 billion annually or whatever in a book, because you don't really grasp it. But sitting there talking to someone who runs that business and hearing about the change that they make in the world, and then being able to pick their brains, and then hearing the responses of the people around you, that was a very valuable experience. And it showed me a lot about how I should maintain an open mind. It definitely taught me not to be so assumptive of people. Now when I enter conversations, I'm very speculative, so I feel like I have been like this always to an extent, because I don't like to assume things of people. But I think it's important in good communication and in building rapport with people that you give people the opportunity and the space to express their own opinion, instead of giving them an opinion and hoping it sticks. If someone looks like they might be into maths and science, you don't say, I bet you like Brian Cox. Because they might not have any idea who Brian Cox is. They might not be, they might not care less about science. But what you can do is say something like, "Oh, I've just watched this documentary about space and it's amazing." It's obviously not a lie, but say something that's relevant and true, and see how they respond. And then you've learnt someone's interest, and you've learnt someone's stance and position, and that's applicable for a lot of things. And it's a really good way of gelling with people without having to know anything about them. They tell you things about them that you can then, turn into conversation, and that's a communication tool and a way to build rapport with people. But it's also quite an effective means of, building a team or building people you trust and things like that, because you are having a good conversation with someone, and that's really important. Another thing that was nice about the experience was that, going back to this independence thing, so I don't want to get too psychometric about it, because I'm very questionable about this sort of thing, but I've been classified by that 16 personalities test, which by all means go and check out. Just Google 16 personalities. It's like a quiz on the internet that allegedly sorts you into a personality that accurately describes you, but I think there's an element of vague writing around it, so that a lot of them feel applicable, and also a lot of them, the questions that ask you could feel different about different things on different days. So, but I've been classified before as an introverted extrovert, and I would probably say that I am. That feels right, because I do have times where I want to be alone, and I do have times where I want to be around people, and being around people gives me energy, but I can also be exhausted by being around people. I don't know if this is just everyone in the world. Again, this is the horoscope thing. Like, it sounds right to me, but also I'm not going to be like, yes, that's it. That is it. I don't want to perpetuate pseudoscience. I don't know what the right pronunciation is. It's fine. But in that week, obviously being around people, learning, expanding your horizons, getting out of your comfort zone, there were a couple of times where I was just like, I need to go just read or be somewhere else. And what was really nice about having these evenings was that I was able to just go and do whatever I wanted. Before I came over, I did a bit of Googling, and I worked out best places to photograph in New York City. I found out about what's the word? Water. It's something water. It's some street in Brooklyn, and it's on all sorts of pictures. It's a very recognizable image. I think like Gossip Girl or Pretty Little Liars or something, whichever one of them is based in New York, they're always stood outside that on that road, which I later sort of had a bit of a laugh at, because once I actually went there, there's a Santander on it that never seems to be in the show. But it's a road where the Manhattan Bridge, or the Brooklyn Bridge, I always forget which, is framed right at the end of the street, and then the skyline is framed behind the bridge so that the Empire State Building is right under the arch of the bridge. And one day I just took myself to Brooklyn on my own, walked around, went the long way, took some photos there, went right up to the water, took some photos of the skyline, and then I just walked back. I just followed the river until I got to one of the bridges. It's the bridge with all the cables, and you can walk over the traffic, and there's bike routes on it. I can't. It's either the Manhattan or the Brooklyn Bridge. It's the one. I'm not even going to try and describe it. Actually, I don't know how I would, but you can see the Statue of Liberty from it. I walked. That took me into Soho, and then I walked through Chinatown and got a pizza. I walked past the Public Theatre, which I already knew about from this amazing documentary called Abstract: The Art of Design, which is based around all these different disciplines. Each episode is a different field, and the graphic design episode, which follows Paula Scher, who is a titan branding graphic designer, who works at Pentagram, which is a huge agency in New York. She did all the rebrand for the Public Theatre, and I remember just walking past and looking up and being like, oh, there's the logo that I already know. And I went inside and got some flyers and things, and that was cool. Yeah, so, and I think I just had music on, and I just walked around taking photos, this summer air. I think I got to Times Square. No, I got to the Empire State, and there were rickshaws, and I thought, yeah, go on. So I got this guy to take me to Times Square in a rickshaw, and then walked around Times Square for a bit, carried on to the hostel, and got back on my own at 9 p.m. and just joined everyone again, because I just that was what I needed. I just unplugged, and then I was recharged by the time I got back. And it was really nice to be around my own company for a change. The other nice thing, and I brought up this story about the college program thing that I was on in sixth form for a reason, because that was a time, because I went to Columbia University, which is in one of the blocks in New York. It's literally this little haven that they've squashed the university into a block in New York City, not too far from the hostel. Actually, it's like 114th or something. I don't know. So that was an experience where I'd been to New York with people that were doing registers, and very, very monitored, and don't leave the bus and that sort of thing. Can't go missing. Stick with your team. Head counts. All that. The other time that I've been to New York was with my family, and that was the year before. So even more looked after, because it's my mum and dad. And this, the staff that was with us was just like, you should do what you want. So that was really, really nice, and it showed me that I can manage myself, and I feel like I already could, and I knew that, and I was excited for the opportunity to do it. But this was my opportunity to manage myself on my own in a foreign city, in a foreign country, and really be free to explore. There was there was a lot of other memorable experiences as well. There was things like we watched a sunset in Williamsburg on this beach go behind the skyline. That was nice. My Instagram benefited so much from this week out, honestly. And then one important experience for the business side of things, going back to the pitch that we had to work on. There was one day we were in a team and we're all working pretty hard, but I remember there was one day where I was just exhausted, and it was a test of resilience, because we were having so many ideas and we were making progress, but it was just that back and forth of let's test out all these different ideas. We need to make sure we're moving in one straight direction, that sort of thing. And it was tricky, and it was the first proper team working experience I'd had in a while. But we ended up getting through it and doing a really, really good pitch, and that showed me what to expect in a team situation. It didn't make me feel like I couldn't manage in a team situation. It made me, if anything, realise that I could manage, and that I can manage, and I shouldn't be afraid of managing. Obviously, uniting under a common goal is difficult, but that's where you've got to come through as a leader and come through as a team member, which, in my experience, are one and the same, because if you're getting your hands dirty, it makes the people around you want to do the same. And if it isn't, then you know, like the VP said, gotta get rid. No, but that obviously wasn't an opportunity that was available to us. We had to work with our team, and our team was really good, so we did some great work, and pitched really well at the end, and that was very rewarding. I'm just scanning over my book now and just seeing if there's anything that I've missed out. The final thing I would say is that we got a lot. No, sorry. What this experience did is make me one connection in particular, a guy that I met on this program, another student who we resonate so well. And there is a story later towards the end of this series that I'm really looking forward to telling, and because it's towards the end, that's even better, because it means that the thing that the story's about will have developed even further. But it's essentially a business idea that me and him are now pursuing, and that's the beauty of consequence and being involved with you know, actively seeking new connections and using your resources and your network and looking for people who you work with and you gel with and you resonate with. So I think that's about all I've got to say about the experience. Obviously the door is open to ask me questions. If anyone wants to just drop me a tweet or an email. The last thing before I get onto all the contact stuff is the takeaways. So the 3 that I have written down on this book are: apply a lot. So that's the more opportunities you apply for, the more experiences you have a chance of being part of. And I think that's proven by this, and also by the college tour thing. That was a video application. I think the more you put your name in for, the more chance you've got of doing fun things. The next one, having total freedom to explore New York was liberating, and I discovered I was comfortable in my independence, and that's a good thing to find out, especially if you're someone that worries about being alone and thinks that you have to be around people to enjoy yourself. I think we sometimes are so used to having a routine that we forget what is available to us. You know, you might be so used to having uni or having work that it's taken for granted that after work comes home, at home comes bed, after bed comes work. It's harder to appreciate this when you're in your home country, but after work during the program, which was all of these sessions, home didn't come next. What came next was I had a whole city to explore, and that was so exciting. And you should always, you know, try and make sure that you're smelling the roses every now and again. And finally, people are interesting. Everyone has something you can learn from. Prepare to have your expectations uprooted. Always, you know, be mindful of other people's perspectives. Let other people teach you. Everyone knows something you don't. It's all been written before, you know, this is nothing new. So I'm going to put an end to this podcast. Next episode, I'll be talking about the battleship Seabrook, which is the computer I didn't believe I could build. So this is the Any Relation to the Crisps podcast. It's my experiences of my year out. Please feel free to give me feedback, ask me questions, that sort of thing. In my Twitter, which is @IamCrisps, and there's also my email, owen@seabrook.media. And I think that's about it. what else do I need to say? Still getting into the format of the radio presenter, so I'm hoping I'm doing a good job. No, in honesty, this podcast is for people who feel like they have a higher potential to hear this and think, yes, things can happen. And the reason I do this podcast isn't to hear my own voice or to relive this really exciting year. It's to show people what you can do. And I've had a lot of surprising revelations that if I were less self-reliant and gave myself less of an opportunity to impress myself and to go against my expectations, I would never have achieved half the stuff in this book. So every episode is gonna differ in its content, but all of the learnings and the developments in each episode are gonna be pretty valuable, I think. So have a listen next episode to hear about how I constructed the battleship Seabrook against my very own belief. And I'll see you then.